Hi everybody, happy Thanksgiving and welcome back to my channel. Today we're making a no-bake, spicy chocolate tart with scorched meringue. For the crust, we need to crush up 6 ounces of chocolate cookie wafers. I'm using a food processor. You could also do this by hand, but you want this to be the consistency of a fine sand, or a coarse sand I should say. Dip that into a bowl and set that aside while we melt down 9 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which we're going to use for both the crust and the filling. So just keep a careful eye on this. It's going to turn to clarified butter and then a foamy butter, and you're going to start noticing brown bits. It's going to start smelling nutty, and once that happens, take that off the heat. To the cookie crumbs, we're going to add a half teaspoon of kosher salt and 5 tablespoons of our brown butter. We're going to use that additional 4 tablespoons for our filling. So once all the butter is in, we're going to mix this up really well because we want all those crumbs saturated. And we're going to tip this into a 9-inch tart dish. And we want to press this out as evenly as possible, and we want those sides to come up about 3/4 of the way, so we're going to use a measuring cup for this. This is going to help flatten out and push up those sides. So just go around carefully and push and pop that in the fridge while we melt down 8 ounces of a bitter chocolate. I'm using 70%. You can use a stronger one, up to you. Now at this point, I wish I would have added the butter here, and you're going to see why for several reasons. This is going to melt pretty quickly, and once it's melted, we're going to take out 2 tablespoons and we're going to drizzle this over the top of our tart shell and brush that out. This is going to form a seal so that when we go to pour in our tart filling, it's not going to soak into the crust. So spread that out as evenly as possible and pop that back in the fridge to harden up and set up. We also need 4 eggs for this, the whites for the meringues and the yolks for our filling. So carefully separate the yolks from the whites and pop that into 2 different containers. Now it's okay if you get some white in the yolk, but it's not okay if you get yolk in the whites, because that's not going to allow your meringue to set up if there's any yolk in it at all. So carefully separate these. Now to our yolks, which are this gorgeous bright orange, I'm adding in 3 tablespoons of cornstarch because we're going to thicken our filling with this mixture. So whisk that well and set that aside. In a large pot over medium heat, we need to add 1.5 cups of heavy cream, along with 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder and a half teaspoon of kosher salt. We're going to give this a really good whisk, bring this up to a simmer, and let that simmer away for 1 minute before adding in 1.5 cups of whole milk and 3/4 cup of sweetened condensed milk. That's all the sweetness we're adding to this. Now for a little extra flavor, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of chili flakes, and we're going to whisk away and let that simmer for 2 minutes before going to temper our eggs. Now, if we try to add our yolks in right away, it would just turn to scrambled eggs, and that would not be appetizing. So we're going to take 1 ladleful of our hot milk, slowly drizzle that in, and whisk furiously. We're going to add in 1 more ladleful, drizzling and whisking at the same time, and that should temper our yolks enough to add back into our hot milk. Now we're going to slowly drizzle in our yolks, whisking again furiously. And you can see this start to thicken up immediately, and it's going to turn almost pudding-like. And we're going to whisk and simmer for 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, we can shut off the heat. And I'm straining in the brown butter because I do want some of those brown bits in there, but not all of the brown bits. This is reason number 1 why I wish I had added this to the chocolate, because it took a while to incorporate this butter. So whisk, and it is going to separate a little bit, but whisk and combine as best you can. If you are making this at home, add that 4 tablespoons of butter to the melted chocolate when you go to melt it. Now we're adding in our chocolate, scraping all of that deliciousness in there, whisking to incorporate, and that is pretty much our tart filling done. We're going to pour this into our chilled tart shell, and you can see a little bit of the separation here. You're going to see it more as it sets up, but we're making a meringue, so it's going to hide a multitude of sins. But again, if you're making this at home, add the butter to the chocolate as it's melting. We're going to pop this in the fridge for 2 hours up to overnight. If you're going to do this overnight, just press a little plastic on top. For our meringue in a bowl or a stand mixer, Whatever you have, we are going to add that in. I did keep those egg whites at room temperature over medium. We're going to whisk away while adding in a half cup of granulated sugar and 3/4 cup of sifted, that's very important, powdered sugar. Once all the sugars are in there, we're going to let that go at medium speed until we form stiff peaks. And that just means when you turn your whisk over, your peak stands up and doesn't flop over. Once we've achieved stiff peak stage, we are going to layer this over the top. And again, you can see that butter has separated there, but enough of me going on about that. You want to swirl this around to make really pretty peaks and go in with a kitchen torch and scorch the top of your meringue. And this is looking really absolutely gorgeous. So let's slice into this because the proof is in the pudding, no pun intended. We want this to stand up when we take this out. So fingers crossed. Oh, let me show you the other side. That is perfect. Now let's go ahead and give this a taste. The chocolate is beautifully bitter. You get a little bit of that chili flake in there. It's not too sweet. All the sweetness comes from this marshmallowy meringue. You get those little hints of scorch marks from the top. This is like an upgraded s'more. Absolute perfection. But there it is. A spicy no-baked chocolate tart with scorched meringue. I hope you'll try to make this in your home. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really do appreciate it. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you loved it, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you haven't already, because I put out new videos every Thursday. Thank you again. Happy Thanksgiving. And until next time, happy cooking.